Hi, my name's Tom Harmening, and I want to welcome you to our first Facebook Live budget conversation. This is our first one, so we'll see how it goes and if it makes sense to do one next year, which we hope we can do. Again, I'm your city manager, Tom Harmening, and with me today is
Tim Simon. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the city.
Thank you, Tim, for being here. And before we go any further, I just want to thank the communication staff for all of their assistance in setting up this Facebook Live event. Without them, we could not have made this happen, I can guarantee you that. I'd also encourage you to send in your questions now, post your questions on our Facebook page, and we'll see if we can get to them today. If we can't, we'll make sure that we follow up and answer them shortly. The reason we're here today in part, or the reason we're talking about budget, is because the state's statute requires, and our city charter requires, that every year we create a budget for the city and identify revenues that will be used to help defray the expenditures in that budget. I want to thank the City Council for the attention that they give to our budget and capital plan every year that we'll be talking about a little bit further. Obviously, the budgeting process is very important to them. A budget in many ways is the ultimate policy document for the city because it identifies how we're going to be spending our resources, and your city council does a really great job working on that throughout the year. It's really a team effort with the council and staff. I think I'll turn it over to Tim. Tim will talk a little bit about schedule. We start very early in the year on our budget process, and I'll let Tim walk through that.
Yes, thank you, Tom. One thing, the city budget is on a calendar year basis, so we January 1 to December 31st. So early on in the year, after the first of the year, April, May timeframe, city staff starts working on the 2018 budget. They do the preparation, reviewing trends, projections, service levels. All staff gets on board and starts working on the April, May, June timeframe. Then we check in with the council in June, make sure their goals and priorities are aligning with our budget assumptions for the 2018 budget. And again in August, we check in with the council. We bring the department directors to the meeting. They can go over any changes, service level changes. We go over any staffing changes with the council. So we do that in August. And then when we get to September timeframe, by state law, by September 30th, the council has to set a maximum property tax levy. So the council set that on September 18th this year. And then from that time, we kind of move and transition into the capital improvement plan process. We do a 10-year capital improvement plan, and we review that with the council in October. At that time, also, we do a long-range financial management plan where we take all of our funds and we look at them over a 10-year forecast. So we're tying in our capital planning with our long-range financial planning on all our funds to ensure that our funds maintain financial stability. So we're busy working on that in October, and we're working on the operating budget at the same time. So then we check in with council in November timeframe, just to make sure our assumptions, the tax levy, the forecasts are all in alignment and make any adjustments at that time. That's all leading up to our Truth in Taxation public hearing on December 4th of this year. So that'll be coming up here in a few weeks. That's a Monday night at 7:30 in our City Hall Council chambers. And after December 4th, the council will not take any action on the budget that night. We come back on December 18th of this year, and we look at adopting the 2018 budget, final tax levies, the 10-year capital improvement plan, which is 2018 to 2027. So you can see we're always continually working on the budget throughout the year, making sure our estimates, our forecasts, our trends are all in alignment as we get ready to adopt our budget here in December for the next year, 2018. Also, I just wanted to point out, while you see these various check-in meetings with the city council and staff reports we prepare along the way, they do all get posted on the city website. So if you go to government, click on the finance division, you can click on city budget, and you can kind of follow along. All the staff reports are there, and you can kind of see how we build the budget all the way up until December. So with that, I believe we're going to talk the capital improvement plan, Tom.
Yes, thanks, Tim. Just to emphasize some of the things that Tim spoke about, it seems like when we get done with one budget, from a finance city manager perspective, we almost start immediately talking about the next budget and certainly get into conversations with staff in the spring of the year and then with our council in the early summer. So it's almost a full year cycle, and that's a good thing because our budget and capital plan is important to everybody that we serve. Speaking of our capital plan, incredibly important document for St. Louis Park, and an incredibly important planning exercise that we go through. The reason for that is St. Louis Park, much of St. Louis Park's infrastructure, its water and sewer systems, its parks, its buildings, its streets, all were built not long after World War II in the 50s and 60s. And they were all built in a relatively condensed period of time, which means that all of that infrastructure wears out in a fairly condensed period of time. And the fortunate situation with St. Louis Park is our city council very early on, many years ago, realized that we needed to have an aggressive capital planning and replacement process. So that is certainly in place for the coming 5 to 10 years as well for St. Louis Park. One form of funding that we use for our capital plan includes a property tax levy, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more. One good thing about St. Louis Park is that our credit rating is very good. Just like viewers at home or watching on your Facebook, on our Facebook site, we all have a credit rating set by credit agencies. And the better your credit rating, the easier it is for you to get loans or perhaps have a lower interest rate. Just like you at home, St. Louis Park has a credit rating as well. In fact, all cities in the United States have a credit rating. Ours is the highest can be. It's the AAA credit rating. There are only 20 other cities in Minnesota that have a AAA bond rating from S&P, and we're very proud of that, and that's because of the sound financial planning that the City Council has undertaken over the years. Just to give you an idea of the magnitude of our capital plan, over the next 5 years, we're estimating that about $162 million worth of projects will need to be undertaken in St. Louis Park. That doesn't mean that all of the money is coming from St. Louis Park. There are other funding agencies as well. It could be the state, the county, the federal government, but it gives you an idea of the magnitude of capital work. Just in 2018 alone, we have $31 million in capital projects programmed right now. So doing capital planning is extremely important, and as important as planning how we pay for our operations every year as well. Tim, I think you're going to walk through some examples of some of the capital projects for 2018.
Yeah. Yep, thank you, Tom. So some of the projects that are being planned for 2018, I kind of have a map here, and I'll kind of walk through some of the highlights. I won't cover them all because it's a big list of different things that are going on with maintenance and replacement of different assets. So you can see in the Elmwood area here, we'll have some street rehab. There'll be some street work going on in that area. Likewise in a few other spots in the city, but you can see in the Elmwood area for next year. We also have some alley work going on in the Sorensen neighborhood, highlighted by the yellow here. So we'll be doing some alley work in that area. We have a big project going on in the Browndale area with the wastewater treatment plant 4 project. That'll be starting here in 2017 and continuing over to 2018. That's a big project that's being undertaken. Also, we have some playground equipment replacement up in Shillard Park up there. We'll be replacing that playground equipment. We also have some playground replacement over in Roxbury Park and Birchwood. So you can see we have some all over the city here, some playground stuff that'll be replaced. We also have a project going on over here in the rec center. We'll have a couple projects related to our facility there. We'll have some front door work being done, banquet and galaxy, kitchen area. There'll be some maintenance and work going there. We'll also be looking at the roof on the east side of the arena for next year. So that would be a big capital project also. We also have some stormwater work being done at the Oregon Pond maintenance there. You can see that it's highlighted there. Also, you see various dots on the board here, and that's fiber going to our various utility stations around the city. We're going to be upgrading all that with the fiber. So it's part of our SCADA system project, where all the controls and data will feed back to a central system so they can monitor water, sewer, stormwater controls and systems. So you can see the dots going all over. That'll be quite a bit of fiber work being done with that project. And I do have a sample of what the fiber does look like. This is a piece of fiber that goes in the ground in a conduit, and is about 100 strands, you can see. So we'll be doing various projects with our SCADA system upgrade in 2018. So we'll make this map available, but you can see the kind of size and scope and projects going on around throughout the city here in 2018.
Yeah, it's going to be a very busy year again. We have been for 9 months working with impacted neighborhoods on projects programmed for their area, in particular the Elmwood area. We started conversations with that neighborhood back in February about work we want to do starting this coming summer. So there's a lot of lead time associated with all of these capital projects, making sure that impacted residents and businesses know how it might affect them. I think we have a question perhaps from Mark. Mark, do you have a question for us?
Absolutely, Tom. You had mentioned it when you discussed the capital improvement plan, but one of the questions we get a lot is, what does the city's AAA bond rating mean for the budget? Could you guys discuss a little bit of what that AAA rating does mean on the budget process?
Yes, I'll take that one. That's a great question that we get quite frequently here at the city. Being the highest credit rating in a AAA city actually means we get the lowest interest rate. So when we're financing our capital improvement projects, the major projects where we need to borrow funds to do the projects, we will get the lowest interest rate at time in the marketplace. Standard & Poor's has a tiered system where it's AAA, AA plus, and on down. So we're grateful to have a AAA credit rating, which in turn affects how much we have to levy on our debt service for the principal and interest repayment on those bonds. So again, by having the highest credit rating, we're able to borrow for those capital projects at the lowest interest cost. And as Tom mentioned, a great comparison is when you look at a mortgage, one of the elements is a credit rating. As you look at applying for auto loans, mortgages, it does allow you to see what your interest rate would be. Again, a higher credit rating typically sometimes leads to a lower interest, like when you pay back a mortgage or a auto loan and so forth. So we are very fortunate at the city, but it does affect through the debt service levy. Again, we have to levy annually the principal and interest repayment on all those bonds. So we're very grateful for all the long-range financial planning. Also, by having the AAA credit rating, it does provide flexibility when interest rates change in the future. We're able to refinance previous bonds at lower interest rates, which in turn would allow future debt service levies to potentially be a little bit lower. So when we talk about the tax levy, we'll talk about debt service, and by having that top rating, we are able to have the lowest interest expense on those bonds.
Maybe just piggybacking on what Tim discussed as to the value of having a AAA bond rating. One of the things the rating agencies look at is the financial stability of the organization itself, and we talked about that in our long-range financial planning that we do in our 10-year capital planning. They love seeing planning done for the future and funding strategies in place to pay for those expenses. The other thing they like to see is the community growing, meaning that the property values in the community is growing. So the redevelopment efforts that we've undertaken over, the last 10 to 20 years is something that rating agencies like to see. And the reason for that is because of that redevelopment, the property tax paying capacity of the community is larger, which means that they view the risk in borrowing money to the city lower. So the lower the risk, the lower the interest rate. So it's not just our own internal financial planning, it's the redevelopment that's taken place in our community as well, which is a good thing. Keep calling or keep posting your questions. We're happy to answer those. Just a quick reminder of that. Maybe a quick overview of our 2018 budget. As many of you know, we just completed our Vision 3.0 initiative. It's our third community visioning process in a little bit more than 20 years. First one starting in 1995, which has been incredibly impactful in terms of the change which has occurred in St. Louis Park. On the heels of that is an update to our comprehensive plan. That's a major undertaking that all cities have to go through every 10 years. We take it to a whole nother level in terms of involving our community. In fact, there are community meetings starting this week in terms of getting your feedback on the future of our community. A comp plan not only includes a land use plan for St. Louis Park, it also includes long-range plans related to our transportation infrastructure systems, parks, housing, the list goes on and on. So it's an incredibly important planning and policy document that we're just in the midst of developing right now with your help. Some other key initiatives, obviously we want to continue to provide a very high level of service. We pride ourselves on that in terms of being responsive, collaborating with the community, working with the community as a partner, and making sure that whatever we do to serve you is done in a high quality way. That's a big part of our budget, providing the day-to-day services that you can experience or enjoy every day. We mentioned just a little bit ago the importance of our capital plan, so our infrastructure projects, major undertaking in 2018. Unfortunately, it does mean some disruption to residents or businesses, but it's necessary to make sure that we don't get behind in making sure that everything is in a high quality condition. We're also adding a few positions. Two of note. One, we're adding another police officer, wanting to make sure that we're being proactive in keeping our community safe. The other is very unique. We're hiring a race equity coordinator, racial equity coordinator, one of the few cities in the state to have a position like that. And that really goes to the council's strong policy directive on the city understanding the importance of race equity and how that affects our service delivery model every day into the future. The idea behind it is this: our community is growing more diverse, our country is growing more diverse, and as we diversify, the service needs of our residents change, or the service needs of our businesses change. We want to make sure that we're providing our services in as equitable manner as possible, given the people that we're serving in the community. This race equity coordinator will be helping us on our journey of making sure that our service delivery model is right for the people who live or work here. So that's a quick snapshot of some of the major points of emphasis in our budget, and Tim's going to walk through a few of the details. And again, send us in your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Now we'll just spend a little bit of time walking through some of the breakout of the city budget. We won't be able to get through all the funds, but we'll focus on primarily the general fund. That's the chief operating fund of the city. That's where our services are mainly provided out of: police, fire, operations and recreation, and so forth. But let's first start with the tax levy. So I think it's always great to show the tax levy breakout. Primarily, 80% of the tax levy goes to the general fund, again, for those key services: park maintenance, police, fire, and so forth. So 80% of our tax levy goes to the general fund. We also levy for debt service. We talked a little bit about the AAA rating, what that means, principal interest. It's a little under 10%. So 10% of our levy goes to paying back principal and interest. And again, that depends on how long the bonds go. So that can fluctuate, and all these can fluctuate in a given year somewhat. We also levy for our capital replacement plan. This is where we replace vehicles, building maintenance needs, software, technology. So vital from an infrastructure technology standpoint, the capital replacement fund. So we levy just about 5.5%. We also levy for our park improvement fund. Again, this is where we talked about some of the park equipment replacements that will happen in 2018. Those will be coming out of our park improvement fund. That fund is not all funded by the tax levy, but you can see about 2.5% goes to the park improvement fund. And we have a few smaller funds here, about 0.5% each. But primarily, again, the general fund, debt service, and our capital replacement park improvement make up most of the tax levy here for 2018 with the city budget. I'm next talking about general fund revenues. Again, we're going to focus on general fund because that is the chief operating fund of the city. Every city primarily has a general fund. All the other capital replacement funds vary from city to city. So if you're doing comparisons, sometimes it can be challenging because certain cities have different funds for certain services that are provided. But in general, most cities do have a general fund. It's just a matter of how that is comparable to service levels at cities. So our general fund, 68% is property tax levy. We also have license and permits. That relates to more building development related items. That's about 10%. We do get some state, federal, local dollars in our general fund. That's about under 5%. And we also have fines and forfeits, miscellaneous revenue, and charges for services making up the rest of the pie chart of the general fund for 2018. But again, property taxes is the main component funding source of our general fund for 2018 from a revenue standpoint. From an expenditure side of things, we are providing services, so personnel is our largest expense. 78% of the general fund goes to personal services. We do have supplies, so like our fuel, snow and salt control expenses, supplies for that makes up a little under 5%. And we have services and charges, that would be like your audit fees, liability insurance, consultant fees, any different things where we're charging, like programming activities, like a rec center for aquatic park, different charges for services that we do here in the city. That makes up about 16%. And with all these budgets and charts, they will vary a little bit between now and the final budget as we fine tweak the numbers a little bit. But in general, this is a good snapshot of where the budget sits from a breakout standpoint. So again, personnel services, supplies under 5%, and services and charges about 16% of the budget.
Mark, do we have a question?
We do have a question. Resident has asked, will the Super Bowl have an impact on the city's budget?
Wow, yeah, the Super Bowl is coming here early February. I forget the exact date, but it's coming, and it will. The Super Bowl, as many of you probably know, has become an international event, just a ginormous event that goes beyond the game itself. And we've been spending time, particularly from a public safety perspective, working with Minneapolis and regional public safety agencies on planning for that event, because getting people to the event or to events before the actual game itself, public safety needs is really a critical component when you plan for a major event of that scale. So in St. Louis Park, particularly again from a public safety perspective, we have we are ready to staff up as necessary to deal with public safety issues that might arise. Let me give you an example. In downtown Minneapolis, a portion of downtown will be cordoned off to traffic for a variety of reasons, including safety. And depending on when something might happen in St. Louis Park, maybe a public safety emergency where an ambulance needs to get out to St. Louis Park, it may lengthen the time for an ambulance from HCMC to get out to St. Louis Park to help our fire department deal with an emergency health-related issue. We have staffed up in anticipation that there may be delays in public safety response from agencies other than St. Louis Park. I would also note that the Super Bowl is not just focused on Minneapolis. There are Super Bowl events that will be occurring, or Super Bowl related events occurring all throughout the metro area, including here in St. Louis Park. Activities, events, parties, and the like, which is all a good thing because it brings people into our community, helps enhance the economy of the community, but we also have to make sure that people are safe when they're visiting here as well. So our focus has been primarily on public safety in terms of a budget impact, not significant by any stretch of the imagination when you compare it to the overall size of our budget, but there is some limited impact, and in some respects that's offset by the economic benefit that we experience as well. Maybe not directly, but still as a community with all of the people that will be visiting our community, our eating establishments, our hotels, and the like.
Great, thank you, Tom. We have time, we'll sneak in one more question here. The city recently redid my road. Will I be assessed for the work?
Well, that's a great question. We frequently do get that one also quite a bit. We have a franchise fee here in St. Louis Park. If you notice on your CenterPoint or Excel utility bill, there's a monthly franchise fee. What we do is we collect that in advance of the road work, so that gets deposited in our pavement management fund. So no, you will not be getting a special assessment based on the current policies today. We do collect a franchise fee instead of the $1,000 or multi-$1,000 assessments that may be the case in other cities. So we have a smaller monthly fee on our, called a franchise fee on our utility bills instead of the assessment.
Yeah, I want to just underscore the importance of how we handle paying for infrastructure improvements here in St. Louis Park. We are in an anomaly. We're unique in that we do not use the state-authorized process of special assessing properties for things like street improvements. The cities around us do, and assessments can be, thousands and thousands of dollars depending upon the types of improvements that are being made in front of your home. And you typically have to pay those off over, let's say, a 10, 15-year period of time with interest. Here, we don't do that. Again, based on some really sound financial planning that our city council undertook back in the early 2000s, we switched from the special assessment process to one where everybody who uses utilities in St. Louis Park, gas and electric, pays a small fee every month that is put into a pool of funds here at the city that we then use to make those improvements throughout the community. And we do it on an 8-year rotating basis. We have an 8-year plan where we'll be in every part of the community once every 8 years. So it mitigates the impact on homeowners in terms of being assessed thousands of dollars all at one time. It's less controversial, so it helps planning for capital improvements, and just provides for a more overall positive outcome when we go into a neighborhood, tear up their streets, and then not ask them to pay a special assessment. That's a big, big deal. So we're really proud of that funding approach, and a lot of other cities are looking at trying to make a change like that.
Kind of last piece here is the communication side of things. As the last slide here shows, stay connected. We have a number of ways that people can stay connected with the budget throughout the year. One is we have on our website an email address, budget@stlouispark.org. If you have a question, you can always submit that there, and I will get that, and we will get you an answer if you have any questions through the process. Also coming up here on December 4th will be our Truth and Taxation. What that will consist of is a presentation of the 2018 budget and allow anybody to comment on that budget for 2018. Also, as we're getting close to the end of the year here and stuff, I always like to let people know that there are property tax refund programs that exist out there. You can go to www.revenue.state.mn.us and search property tax refunds to see if you would be eligible. So something to always consider and look at too. I believe we may have another question.
Yeah, well, one other additional item that we get a lot of questions on at City Hall, and especially within the utility billing department, is why have my utility rates gone up over the years? If you guys want to discuss some of the background of what goes into those rates.
Do you want to handle that, Tim?
Yeah, I'll take that one. As Tom had mentioned, as we were going through our capital improvement plan, we have a 10-year plan. So we see the infrastructure coming 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road. So we're always seeing what that expense will be, that replacement cost will be in the long-term future. So we're always trying to ensure that our rates are sustainable enough in the various funds, water, sewer, stormwater, and solid waste, to fund the maintenance of that infrastructure, the replacement of that infrastructure. So when we're doing our rate analysis, we're not just looking at what the rates are for next year. We're looking at what the big picture is for the next 10 years as far as rates go. And also usage can change too. So as people use more or less, we're adjusting that every year too to see where the rates have to be, again, to make sure we're funding the timely replacement of the infrastructure as it comes due. An example would be like a water main replacement, where we're evaluating sections of the city. If they're determined to be in a lower condition or have more than 5 breaks, we consider those for replacement. But that's all done in conjunction with our pavement management plan. So we're not just opening up the street to do a water main, we're kind of coordinating the effort together. If the street's being opened up, it would be, could that be an optimal time to replace that at the same time? So there's a lot of coordination between operations and recreation and engineering department from a planning perspective. But yeah, the rates may change and fluctuate, but again, it's all based on infrastructure, the costs of that system, and maintaining the stability of those funds going forward.
Great.
Any other questions we have, Mark?
Yeah, we have
No?
one final, we can wrap up here. Tim went over the schedule for, adopting the budget. We're definitely getting to the time of year where we have our truth and taxation meetings. Could you guys talk a little bit about the format of the truth and taxation meetings this fall?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tim.
I'll take that one. Thanks, Mark. The way the meeting is set up is, what we'll do is staff will make a presentation, similar in a little more detail than we went over today, but we'll go through the 2018 budget with the city council, do a PowerPoint type presentation. After that, the mayor will ask if anybody would like to comment on the 2018 budget. And at that time, if you have questions or concerns, you certainly can talk about those. And then after that, we will consider adopting the budget only after that public hearing, like on December 18th. So it's really, we'll do a staff presentation, and you can listen and see and hear about the budget. And if you have any comments, you'll have time to comment also.
Yeah, but I'd also want to make a note that you don't have to wait until December 4th. You can call, you can email, you can come to City Hall. We'd be happy to meet with you if you have questions, comments, or concerns about the budget, about your property taxes for the coming year. Again, you don't have to wait till December 4th. We're always happy to help you with questions that you might have. So I think we're wrapped up here. This is, we're concluding our first Facebook Live budget conversation. I hope you found it informative, and if you have any suggestions on how we could make this better next time, because I'm pretty sure there will be a next time, just let us know. We're always open for good ideas and constructive suggestions. So I think we're signing off. Thanks very much.
Thank you.